The morning of his wedding day, Jake stood in front of the mirror in his quarters on Harmony Point and adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform for the 10th time. His hands were shaking slightly, and he couldn't tell if it was from excitement or terror. After 6 months of talking with Lyra through messages, he was finally going to see her face to face. Harmony Point was a massive space station that served as neutral ground between different alien species. Jake had arrived 3 days earlier and spent the time learning about Zephyrian wedding customs from the station's cultural advisors. The ceremony would blend traditions from both species with representatives from Earth and the Zephyrian homeworld, watching through video links. "You ready for this?" Lieutenant Cooper asked as she entered his quarters. She had volunteered to serve as his best man, though neither of them was sure what that meant in an alien wedding. "As ready as someone can be for marrying a person they've never seen," Jake replied, trying to smile. "Did you hear anything from the Zephyrian delegation?" "They arrived this morning. Their ship is beautiful, by the way. Looks like it's made of liquid silver. But they're keeping Lyra in private quarters until the ceremony. Very traditional about the whole thing," Jake nodded. He had learned that Zephyrian marriages were considered sacred bonds that lasted for life. The fact that Lyra was willing to marry outside her species had caused quite a stir in their society. Some Zephyrians saw it as brave, while others considered it scandalous. 2 hours later, Jake found himself standing in Harmony Point's ceremonial hall. The room was designed to accommodate different alien species, with adjustable lighting and atmosphere controls. Today, it was set up with decorations from both Earth and the Zephyrian homeworld. Human flowers were arranged alongside crystal formations that glowed with soft blue light. Jake's family and friends watched from Earth through a large video screen. His sister Kate was crying, though she tried to hide it. Captain Stevens and the crew of the Freedom's Dawn were there too, along with government officials who looked nervous about the whole arrangement. On another screen, Zephyrian dignitaries observed from their homeworld. Jake couldn't understand their appearance very well through the video connection, but they seemed tall and elegant, with skin that shifted colors like oil. On Waterdot, the station's chaplain, a friendly alien called a Centaurian, stepped forward to begin the ceremony. Centaurians were known throughout the galaxy for their diplomatic skills and their ability to blend different cultural traditions. "Today we witness a union that bridges two worlds," the chaplain said in his melodic voice. "Jake Morrison of Earth and Lyravel Fan of Zephyr Prime have chosen to bind their lives together in the spirit of peace and understanding between their peoples." Jake heard a soft sound behind him and turned to see a procession entering the hall. Several Zephyrians in flowing robes walked slowly toward the altar, and in the center was a figure completely covered in traditional wedding veils. Jake's heart began beating so fast he was sure everyone in the room could hear it. The veiled figure moved with incredible grace, seeming to glide across the floor without effort. Jake caught glimpses of hands that were longer and more slender than human hands, with an extra joint in each finger. The wedding dress was beautiful, made of fabric that seemed to shift between silver and blue as the light hit it. As the procession reached the altar, Jake found himself standing face to face with his bride, though he still couldn't see her through the veils. He could hear her breathing, which sounded slightly different from human breathing, with a soft whistling quality that was actually quite pleasant. The ceremony began with traditional words in 3 languages. Jake spoke his vows in English, promising to honor and respect Lyra for as long as he lived. When Lyra spoke her vows in the Zephyrian language, her voice had the same musical quality he remembered from their messages, but hearing it in person made his chest feel warm. "Now comes the moment of revelation," the chaplain announced. "According to both human and Zephyrian tradition, the couple will see each other clearly for the first time as they are joined in marriage." Jake's hands trembled as he reached for the edge of Lyra's veil, This was it. After months of wondering, he was about to discover what his wife looked like. He lifted the fabric slowly, and the ceremonial hall fell completely silent. Jake's first thought was that Lyra was nothing like he had imagined. She wasn't humanoid at all. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with a slender build that made her look both strong and graceful. Her skin was covered in small scales that shifted color from deep blue to silver as he watched. She had 4 arms instead of 2, and her face was elongated with large golden eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom not by human standards. She should have been frightening or alien. Instead, Jake found himself thinking she was the most beautiful creature he had ever seen. Her scales shimmered like jewels in the ceremonial lighting, and her golden eyes were filled with intelligence and kindness. When she looked at him, her scales shifted to a warm amber color that somehow conveyed nervousness and hope. Jake reached out slowly and touched her face with gentle fingers. Her scales were warm and smooth, like polished stones in sunlight. "You're beautiful," he said softly, and he meant every word. Lyra's scales brightened to a brilliant gold that made her glow like a sunrise. Jake didn't know what the color change meant, but her expression was unmistakable. She was smiling, and her smile was radiant. "You are not afraid," she said in her musical voice, speaking English now instead of her native language. "I had feared you would find me hideous." "Never," Jake replied. "You're perfect." The chaplain completed the ceremony with ancient words that bound them together according to the laws of both species. When it was finished, Jake and Lyra were officially married. Representatives of 2 worlds joined in a union that many thought impossible. The reception was a strange mix of human and Zephyrian customs. Jake watched in fascination as Lyra moved through the crowd, her 4 arms allowing her to gesture in ways that seemed like a complex dance. Other Zephyrians communicated partly through color changes in their scales, and Jake began to understand that they had a much more sophisticated emotional language than humans realized. When the official celebrations ended, Jake and Lyra were escorted to their private quarters on the station. Jake had been nervous about this moment for weeks, unsure how physical intimacy would work between such different species. But when they were alone together, Lyra sat down on a comfortable chair and gestured for Jake to sit across from her. "I think we should talk first," she said with a gentle smile. "We have learned much about each other's minds through our messages, but we know nothing of each other's bodies and customs." Jake felt relieved. "I was hoping you'd say that. I don't want to do anything that might hurt you or make you uncomfortable. This is why I chose you, Jake Morrison," Lyra said, her scales shifting to warm gold again. "You think of others before yourself. Among my people, this is the rarest and most valued trait." They spent their wedding night sitting together and talking. Lyra showed Jake how her scales changed color with different emotions and taught him to read the subtle patterns that indicated happiness, curiosity, or affection. Jake taught her to interpret human facial expressions and body language, explaining how humans communicated feelings through gestures and tone of voice. "Your species is so expressive with your faces," Lyra said, reaching out to touch his cheek with one of her 4 hands. "My people communicate emotion through scale patterns, but humans show everything in their eyes and mouth. It is beautiful in its complexity." As the station's artificial night cycle began, Jake and Lyra lay down on their large bed, designed to accommodate Lyra's unique physiology. They didn't make love in any physical sense that either species would recognize, but they held each other gently and continued talking until they both fell asleep. Jake's last thought before drifting off was that he had married a complete stranger from another world, and somehow it felt like the most natural thing he had ever done. 5 years had passed since Jake and Lyra made their bold decision to leave both their governments behind and build something new. Their research station, which they named Bridge Point, now floated in neutral space between human and Zephyrian territory. What had started as a dream shared between two married outcasts had grown into the most successful interspecies cooperation project in galactic history. Jake stood on the observation deck of Bridgepoint, watching ships from dozens of different worlds dock at their station. Human vessels painted with Earth's blue and white colors arrived alongside Zephyrian ships that gleamed like liquid silver. But there were others too. The crystal ships of the Andromedans, the living vessels grown by the plant-like Vergani, and even the mysterious dark ships of the Void Walkers, who rarely interacted with other species. "Another busy day," Lyra said as she joined him at the viewing window. Her scales shimmered with the peaceful blue-green color that Jake had learned meant contentment. After 5 years of marriage, he could read her emotions as easily as a human face. "Remember when we thought 50 people would be a big success?" Jake replied, putting his arm around her slender waist. "Now we have over 3,000 researchers from 40 different species." Bridgepoint had grown far beyond what they had originally planned. What began as a small scientific station had become a thriving community where beings from across the galaxy came to work together on projects that no single species could accomplish alone. They had developed new medicines that worked on multiple alien biologies, created communication systems that could translate between hundreds of languages, and even figured out how to grow food that different species could share. The success of Bridgepoint had not gone unnoticed by the governments. They had left behind. Both Earth and the Zephyrian Council had tried to pressure Jake and Lyra to return, offering them positions of power and wealth if they would bring their research back to their homeworlds. But Jake and Lyra had refused every offer. "We built this place to be free from politics," Lyra often said when government officials contacted them. "The moment we choose sides, we destroy everything we've worked for." Their most important achievement was not any specific invention or discovery, but the community they had created. Young beings from different worlds came to Bridgepoint to learn not just science and technology, but how to understand and work with species completely different from their own. Jake smiled as he watched a group of human children playing with young Zephyrians in the station's central park. The human kids were fascinated by their playmates' color-changing scales, while the young Zephyrians giggled at the funny expressions humans made with their faces. These children were growing up seeing interspecies friendship as normal, and Jake hoped they would carry that acceptance with them for the rest of their lives. "Dr. Morrison?" a voice said behind him. Jake turned to see Dr. Chun, a human xenobiologist who had joined Bridgepoint 2 years earlier. "We have visitors requesting a meeting with you and Dr. Lyra." Jake and Lyra exchanged glances. Unannounced visitors usually meant either very good news or very bad news. They followed Dr. Chun to the main conference room, where they found two familiar faces waiting for them. Admiral Price from Earth's Space Command sat at the table across from Counselor Velthan, a high-ranking member of the Zephyrian government. Jake recognized both of them from news broadcasts, but he had never met them in person. What surprised him was that they were sitting together peacefully when their governments had been in a Cold War for the past 3 years. "Jake Morrison," Admiral Price said, standing to shake Jake's hand. "I've been wanting to meet you for a long time. And Dr. Lyra Velthan, your reputation as a scientist has reached the highest levels of both our governments." Counselor Velthan's scales shifted to formal silver as she spoke. "We have come here together because both our peoples face a crisis that requires the kind of cooperation you have demonstrated at Bridgepoint." Jake sat down carefully, with Lyra beside him. "What kind of crisis?" Admiral Price activated a holographic display that showed a star map of the local galaxy. 3 months ago, our deep space sensors detected something moving toward our region from outside the galaxy. It's massive, artificial, and it's destroyed everything in its path. We estimate it will reach inhabited space within 2 years. Lyra leaned forward, her scales showing the deep blue that indicated intense concentration. What do you know about its capabilities? It appears to be some kind of automated weapon system, Counselor Velthan replied. It systematically destroys all technology and eliminates all life on every world it encounters. Our scientists believe it was built by a species that went extinct millions of years ago, programmed to continue its mission long after its creators died. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. How many worlds has it destroyed? 17 that we know of, Admiral Price said grimly. All of them were home to advanced civilizations. The weapon doesn't seem to distinguish between different species or technologies. It simply eliminates everything it finds. Lyra's 4 hands moved in the complex gesture that Jake recognized as her thinking pattern. You want us to help you fight this thing. More than that, Counselor Velthan said. We want you to lead a joint research project involving every known species in the galaxy. Humans and Zephyrians working together won't be enough. We need everyone. Jake looked around the conference room, thinking about all the different species that had found a home at Bridgepoint. And you think we can convince them to cooperate? You've already done it on a small scale, Admiral Price replied. Bridgepoint proves that different species can work together when they have a common goal. Now we need to do it on a galactic scale, or we all die separately. That night, Jake and Lyra walked through the quiet corridors of Bridgepoint, discussing the enormous request that had been made of them. The station's artificial night cycle had dimmed the lights, and most of the residents were sleeping. They're asking us to save the galaxy, Jake said, still hardly believing it. They're asking us to do what we've always done, Lyra replied. Show people that cooperation works better than conflict. The scale is larger, but the principle is the same. Jake stopped walking and turned to face his wife. Are you ready for this? If we say yes, Bridgepoint will become the center of the biggest military project in galactic history. Everything we've built here could be destroyed. Lyra's scales shifted to warm gold, the color that still meant love and determination after all these years. Jake Morrison, 5 years ago, you volunteered to marry an alien woman you had never seen because you believed it would help both our species. You did it even though it meant giving up your old life forever. And I never regretted it, Jake said softly. Neither did I. Now we have a chance to do something even bigger. We can bring together every species in the galaxy to face a threat that could destroy us all. If we succeed, we'll create a level of cooperation that has never existed before. If we fail, at least we'll fail together. Jake took her hands in his and kissed her gently. Even after 5 years, touching her still felt like a miracle. Then, let's save the galaxy. The next morning, Jake and Lyra sent messages to every government and organization they had contacts with. They invited representatives from all known species to come to Bridgepoint for an emergency conference. They explained about the approaching threat and the need for unprecedented cooperation. The response was overwhelming. Within a month, Bridgepoint was hosting delegates from over 60 different species, many of whom had never spoken to each other before. The station had to be expanded twice just to accommodate everyone. Jake watched from the observation deck as the largest gathering of alien species in galactic history worked together to plan their defense. Scientists shared their most advanced technologies freely. Military leaders from species that had been enemies for centuries sat at the same table planning joint operations. Engineers from worlds with completely different physics worked together to design weapons that could stop an ancient killing machine. Look what we started, Lyra said as she joined him at the window. Her scales showed the deep purple that meant awe and wonder. We didn't start this, Jake replied. We just showed them it was possible. As Jake and Lyra watched their dream of interspecies cooperation become reality on a scale they had never imagined, They knew that whatever happened next, they had already accomplished something amazing. They had proved that love could bridge any gap, that understanding could overcome any difference, and that beings from different worlds could work together when they shared a common purpose. Jake Morrison had married an alien woman without seeing. Her first, and it had led to the greatest alliance in galactic history. He had never regretted his choice for a single day, and now he never would. 2 months after their wedding, Jake and Lyra had settled into a comfortable routine aboard Harmony Point. They lived in a special section of the station designed for diplomatic families, with quarters that could accommodate both human and Zephyrian needs. Jake worked with the station's engineering team, while Lyra conducted research in the science laboratories. Every morning, they would share breakfast together, though they ate very different foods. Jake had his coffee and toast, while Lyra consumed a nutrient gel that tasted like flowers and provided all the minerals her scaled body needed. They would talk about their work plans for the day, and Jake had learned to read the subtle color changes in Lyra's scales that showed her moods and emotions. Their marriage had become a symbol of hope for many people in both species, but it had also made them targets for those who opposed cooperation between humans and Zephyrians. Jake first realized this when Lieutenant Cooper contacted him with disturbing news from Earth. "Jake, we've been monitoring communications from several extremist groups," Cooper said through a secure video link. "There's an organization calling itself Human Purity that's been making threats against you. They're calling you a traitor and saying you've contaminated the human gene pool." Jake felt his stomach tighten. How serious are these threats? Serious enough that Earth Security is investigating. They've intercepted messages discussing plans to assassinate you if you ever return to human space. These people think you're setting a dangerous example by marrying an alien. Lyra was in the room when Jake received this news, and her scales immediately shifted to a dark blue that Jake had learned meant worry and anger. "My people have similar problems," she said quietly. "The traditional council has been pressuring my family to declare our marriage invalid. They claim I have dishonored myself by bonding with what they call a primitive species." Jake reached over and took one of her 4 hands in his. "We knew this wouldn't be easy, but we can handle some angry politicians." Their situation became more dangerous 3 weeks later, when an explosion rocked the science laboratory where Lyra worked. Jake was in the engineering section when the alarm sounded, and he ran through the station corridors as fast as he could move. When he reached the lab, he found Lyra sitting on the floor with a medical technician treating a cut on her arm. The lab was a mess, with equipment scattered everywhere and scorch marks on the walls. "What happened?" Jake asked, kneeling beside his wife. "Someone planted a small bomb in my research equipment," Lyra replied, her scales showing a mixture of anger and confusion. "It was designed to injure rather than kill, but the message was clear." Station security found evidence that extremists from both species had worked together to plan the attack. A human terrorist group had provided the explosives, while Zephyrian traditionalists had given them information about Lyra's work schedule. It was the first time in history that human and alien extremists had cooperated, and they had done it to target Jake and Lyra's marriage. "This has to stop," Jake said to the station commander. "We can't let terrorists dictate how our species interact with each other." Commander Walsh, an experienced diplomat from the Centaurian species, agreed. "The problem is that you two have become symbols. Some people see you as proof that different species can work together, while others see you as a threat to racial purity. Both sides are watching everything you do." The real test of their marriage came 1 month later, when a deadly plague broke out aboard the Freedom's Dawn. The colony ship was still docked at Luna Station, preparing for its journey, when crew members started falling ill with a mysterious disease that attacked the nervous system. Jake received an emergency communication from Captain Stevens. "Jake, we need help. 12 people are dead, and 50 more are sick. Our medical team can't identify the disease, and it's spreading fast. We might have to cancel the colony mission. Jake felt torn. The Freedom's Dawn was his ship, his crew, and they needed him. But leaving Harmony Point would mean entering human space where extremist groups wanted him dead. I have to go help them, Jake told Lyra. Those people are depending on me. Lyra's scales shifted through several colors as she considered this. If you return to human space, the terrorists will try to kill you. And if I come with you, I will be the first Zephyrian to enter your territory. That could cause diplomatic problems. I can't let my friends die while I hide on a neutral station, Jake said. But I won't ask you to risk your safety for my problems. Lyra stood up and moved close to him, her 4 arms wrapping around his body in the way that always made him. Feel safe and loved. Jake Morrison, we are married. Your problems are my problems now. Besides, I am a xenobiologist. Perhaps I can help identify this disease. They departed for Luna Station the next day aboard a small diplomatic ship. Jake spent the journey worried about Lyra's safety, while she spent it studying all available data about the plague. By the time they reached the station, Lyra had developed several theories about what might be causing the illness. The Freedoms. Dawn was under strict quarantine when they arrived. Jake and Lyra had to wear full protective suits before boarding. The ship. Jake was shocked by what he saw. The corridors that had once been busy with activity were now nearly empty. Crew members who weren't sick were working double shifts to keep essential systems running. Captain Stevens met them in the medical bay, where Dr. Martinez was treating the latest victims. Jake, thank God you're here. And you must be Lyra. Thank you for coming. Lyra immediately began studying tissue samples from the infected crew members. Her 4 arms allowed her to work with multiple pieces of equipment at once, and her golden eyes could see light frequencies that humans couldn't detect. This is not a natural disease, she announced after several hours of work. The molecular structure is too complex. Someone engineered this plague specifically to target human physiology. Dr. Martinez looked up from her patient charts. You're saying this was biological warfare? Yes, but not by my people, Lyra replied firmly. The genetic markers are wrong for Zephyrian biotechnology. This came from somewhere else. Jake felt cold fear in his chest. If someone is using biological weapons against human colonies, the whole expansion program could be in danger. Working together, Jake and Lyra spent the next 48 hours developing a treatment for the plague. Jake's engineering skills helped him understand how the disease attacked cellular machinery, while Lyra's biological knowledge showed them how to disrupt the process. We need to create a frequency generator that can break down the disease's protein structure, Jake explained to the medical team. If we can broadcast the right electromagnetic pattern throughout the ship, it should neutralize the plague without harming the crew. I can synthesize the complementary compounds needed to support this treatment, Lyra added. My people have advanced biochemical technology that can produce the necessary molecules. They worked without sleep for 2 days, building the frequency generator and producing the supporting medications. Jake had never seen anything like Lyra's ability to manipulate complex biological systems. She seemed to understand life itself at a level that amazed him. When they activated the treatment, the results were immediate. Within hours, sick crew members began recovering. Within a day, the plague was completely eliminated from the ship. Captain Stevens called a meeting of all senior staff to thank Jake and Lyra personally. You two saved not just our mission, but possibly the entire human expansion program. If this plague had spread to other ships or colonies, it could have killed thousands of people. But their success had an unexpected result. Both human and Zephyrian governments began pressuring them to share their breakthrough. Earth's military wanted to understand how biological weapons could be developed and countered. The Zephyrian Council wanted access to the human engineering techniques that had made the cure possible. They want to use us, Lyra said sadly as they returned to Harmony Point. Our marriage was supposed to be about peace and cooperation, but now both sides see us as sources of military advantage. Jake felt angry and frustrated. We saved lives, and all they can think about is how to use our work for their own benefit. That night, as they lay in their bed aboard Harmony Point, Jake and Lyra made a decision that would change their lives forever. They would refuse to be used as tools by either government. Instead, they would create something new, a place where humans and Zephyrians could work together freely without political interference. We'll build our own research station, Jake said, somewhere between human and Zephyrian space, where scientists from both species can collaborate without government. Control. Lyra's scales glowed with warm gold. The color Jake had learned meant deep happiness and love. Yes, she agreed. We will show both our peoples what cooperation can accomplish when it's not corrupted by fear and politics. It would be dangerous to defy both their governments, but Jake and Lyra had learned that their love was stronger than the hatred and suspicion that divided their species. 3 weeks after the meeting, Jake sat in his small quarters aboard the Freedom's Dawn, staring at a blank communication screen. The Zephyrian Council had accepted his offer, and now he was supposed to record his first message to his future wife. The diplomatic staff had given him a list of acceptable topics, but Jake felt lost. How do you talk to someone from another world when you don't even know what they look like? He pressed the record button and cleared his throat. Hello, Lyravel Fan. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm an engineer working on humanity's colony ship. I volunteered to marry you because I believe our species can work together and help each other. I hope we can learn to understand one another. Jake paused, trying to think of something else to say. The diplomatic guidelines warned against being too personal, but Jake had never been good at formal speech. I've never been married before, to a human or anyone else. I don't know much about Zephyrian culture, but I'm willing to learn. I hope you'll be patient with me. He stopped the recording and sent it through the diplomatic channels. According to the officials, it would take 2 days for the message to reach Lyra through the secure communication network between species. Jake tried to get back to work on the ship's engines, but he couldn't stop wondering what kind of response he would get. 2 days later, Jake's door chimed. He opened it to find Lieutenant Cooper holding a datapad. Your first message from the Yao. Bride, she said with a slight smile. Good luck. Jake took the pad with nervous hands and waited for Cooper to leave before playing the message. A voice filled his quarters, speaking perfect English with a strange accent that made each word sound like music. Hello, Jake Morrison. I am Lyravel Fan, researcher of biological systems and student of alien cultures. I chose you from the list of volunteers because your engineering reports showed creative problem-solving skills. You fix broken things by thinking in new ways, not by following old rules. Jake blinked in surprise. She had read his engineering reports? And she chose him? He had assumed the Zephyrians would just pick someone randomly. Lyra's voice continued. I have studied human behavior for many years. Your species is fascinating in its illogical approach to complex problems. Where my people would calculate the most efficient solution, humans often discover better answers through what you call trial and error. Your proposal to marry me is another example of this strange human logic. Most beings would consider this arrangement foolish, but I find it intriguing. There was a pause in the recording, and Lyra spoke again, her tone softer. I should tell you that I am not considered a good marriage prospect among my own people. I ask too many questions and refuse to follow social expectations. I have rejected 47 marriage offers from Zephyrian males because I found them boring and predictable. Perhaps a human husband will be more interesting. Jake found himself smiling. She sounded smart and funny, with a confidence that reminded him of his sister Kate. He immediately started recording a response. Over the following weeks, Jake and Lyra exchanged messages every few days. Jake learned that Zephyrians lived much longer than humans, and Lyra was already over 200 years old, though she was still considered young by her people's standards. She worked as a xenobiologist, studying how different species adapted to various environments. "Your colony ship fascinates me," Lyra said in one message. "Humans pack thousands of individuals into a small space and send them across the galaxy based on hope and determination. My people would spend decades calculating every possible risk before attempting such a journey. Yet humans have already established 12 successful colonies, while we are still debating whether space travel is worth the danger." Jake told her about his work on the engines, explaining how humans had developed faster-than-light travel through a combination of alien technology and human innovation. "We're not as advanced as your people," he said, "but we're good at taking things apart and putting them back together in new ways. Sometimes that leads to surprising discoveries." "This is exactly what interests me about humans," Lyra replied. "You embrace uncertainty in ways my people cannot understand. We value knowledge and predictability above all else. But watching human behavior has taught me that sometimes the best solutions come from accepting that you don't know everything." As the weeks passed, their conversations became more personal. Lyra described her homeworld, a place of vast crystal cities and floating gardens where the air itself glowed with bioluminescent particles. "The most beautiful sight on my world happens at sunset," she said. "The crystal spires catch the light and split it into millions of colors that dance across the sky. I have always wondered what beauty looks like through human eyes." Jake told her about Earth's thunderstorms, how he used to sit on his family's porch and watch lightning split the sky. "My sister always thought I was crazy for enjoying storms," he said. "But there's something amazing about seeing that much power in nature. It's dangerous and beautiful at the same time. That's actually why I became an engineer. I wanted to understand how to harness that kind of energy." "Your description makes me wish I could experience an Earth storm," Lyra said. "My people avoid dangerous weather, but you speak of it like poetry. This is another way humans surprise me. You find beauty in things that should frighten you." Not all their conversations were easy. Jake learned that many Zephyrians considered humans to be primitive and violent. "Some members of my family believe I am making a mistake," Lyra admitted. "They think humans are too emotional and unpredictable to be trusted. They worry that marrying you will damage my reputation as a scientist." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he tried to keep his voice calm when he responded. "Some humans think I'm crazy too. They say I'm betraying my own species by marrying an alien. But I think they're wrong. I think our differences could make us stronger if we give each other a chance." "I agree," Lyra said in her next message. "But we will have to prove this too. Both our peoples. They will be watching us, waiting for us to fail. Are you prepared for that kind of pressure?" Jake thought about it for a long time before answering. "I've never backed down from a challenge," he said finally. "And something tells me you haven't either. If we're both stubborn enough, maybe we can make this work." To his surprise, Lyra laughed in her response. It was the first time he had heard her laugh, and the sound was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Yes, Jake Morrison, I am very stubborn. My teachers used to say it was my greatest flaw, but perhaps it will be useful in marriage." 3 months into their correspondence, Jake realized something that shocked him. He was looking forward to Lyra's messages more than anything else in his day. When a message was late, he found himself checking his communication terminal every few minutes. When she told him about her research or described something from her world, he felt like he was discovering treasures. "I have a confession," he said, in one message. I'm starting to care about you as more than just a diplomatic arrangement. I know we've never met, and I know you're not human, but I enjoy talking with you more than I've enjoyed talking with anyone in years. Is that strange? Lyra's response came faster than usual. It is not strange, Jake Morrison. I have been feeling something similar. When I record messages for you, I find myself trying to make you laugh. When you describe your work or your memories, I feel what humans call happiness. I did not expect this when I agreed to the marriage, but I am not disappointed by it. Jake stared at the communication screen for a long time after that message ended. He was falling in love with someone he had never seen, someone from another world whose appearance he couldn't even imagine. But somehow, that didn't seem to matter anymore. Her voice, her thoughts, her curiosity about the universe, those things felt more real to him than anything he could see with his eyes. 3 months. Until the wedding, and Jake Morrison was already counting the days. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished checking the engine systems on the colony ship Freedom's Dawn. The massive vessel was humanity's pride and joy, designed to carry 10,000 people to their new home among the stars. Jake had spent 3 years working on its engines, making sure every bolt was tight and every wire was perfect. He loved his job, but today felt different. Today, everything was about to change. The intercom crackled to life above his head. All senior staff report to Conference Room Alpha immediately. This is not a drill. Jake frowned and set down his tools. Senior staff meetings usually meant bad news, and the captain's voice sounded more serious than usual. Jake walked through the ship's long corridors, passing other crew members who looked just as confused as he felt. The Freedom's Dawn was still docked at Luna Station, orbiting Earth's moon, but they were supposed to launch next month. Jake hoped nothing was wrong with the mission. When he reached Conference Room Alpha, he saw familiar faces around the table. Captain Stevens sat at the head, looking tired and worried. Dr. Martinez from the medical team was there, along with Lieutenant Cooper from security and a few other department heads. But Jake noticed some unfamiliar faces, too. Men and women in expensive suits who looked like they came from Earth's government. Please sit down, everyone, Captain Stevens said. His voice was heavy, like he was carrying a great weight. We have a serious problem. A problem that could end our mission before it starts. One of the government officials, a woman with silver hair, stood up. 3 days ago, there was an incident at the Zephyrian embassy on Mars. One of our diplomatic staff accidentally violated a sacred Zephyrian ritual. He entered a temple wearing shoes, which is apparently one of the worst insults possible in their culture. Jake had heard of the Zephyrians. They were one of the most powerful alien races in the galaxy, controlling dozens of star systems. Humanity had been trying to build good relationships with them for years, hoping to gain access to their advanced technology and trade routes. The Zephyrian Council is furious, the woman continued. They're calling it an act of deliberate disrespect. Some of their leaders want to cut off all contact with humanity. Others are talking about blocking our expansion into space. Captain Stevens leaned forward. Without Zephyrian approval, we can't establish our colony. The star system we're heading. TO is too close to their territory. They could destroy us the moment we arrive. The room fell silent. Jake felt his stomach drop. 3 years of work, 10,000 people ready to start new lives, and it could all be ruined because someone forgot to take off their shoes. However, the silver-haired woman said, the Zephyrian Council has offered us one chance to make things right. They want a gesture of good faith, a symbol of trust between our species. Dr. Martinez spoke up. What kind of symbol? A marriage, another government official said. A human must marry a Zephyrian in their traditional ceremony. It would show that we respect their culture and want to build lasting bonds between our peoples. Jake blinked. Marriage? But humans and Zephyrians are completely different species. How would that even work? The marriage would be purely symbolic, the woman explained. It's about showing respect and commitment to peace. The Zephyrian who volunteers would be someone important in their society. The human would live on a neutral space station and work as a cultural ambassador. Lieutenant Cooper shook her head. That sounds like exile. Whoever agrees to this would never be able to come home. That's correct, the official admitted. This person would be giving up their life on Earth forever. But they would be saving the colony mission and potentially preventing a war between our species. Captain Stevens looked around the table. We need a volunteer. Someone willing to make this sacrifice for the good of humanity. The wedding would take place in 6 months on Harmony Point, a neutral trading station. The room was quiet for a long moment. Jake thought about the 10,000 people sleeping in the ship's hibernation pods, dreaming of their new home. He thought about the families with children, the scientists eager to explore new worlds, the farmers ready to grow crops under alien suns. All of their dreams depended on this mission succeeding. I'll do it, Jake said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Captain Stevens frowned. Jake, you don't understand what you're agreeing to. This isn't just about marriage. You'd be completely cut off from human society. You might never see Earth again. I understand, Jake replied. But if I don't do this, none of us get to see our new home either. Those people in the hibernation pods trusted us to get them safely to their destination. I won't let them down. Dr. Martinez leaned forward. Jake, we don't know anything about Zephyrian biology. We don't even know if this marriage would be safe for you. What if their customs require things that could hurt you? The silver-haired woman pulled out a datapad. We've been given some basic information. The Zephyrian volunteer is a female named Lyra Fan. She's described as a scientist and researcher. The marriage ceremony is non-violent and focuses on symbolic unity rather than physical contact. What else do we know about her? Jake asked. The woman hesitated. Not much. The Zephyrians value privacy highly. We know she's older than most Zephyrian brides, and she specifically requested a human husband rather than accepting matches from her own species. Their diplomats described her as intelligent but difficult. Jake almost smiled. Difficult how? She apparently has strong opinions and doesn't follow traditional Zephyrian social rules. She's refused dozens of marriage offers from important Zephyrian males. Some of their leaders think she's unstable because of her interest in alien cultures. So she's independent and curious about other species, Jake said. That doesn't sound so bad. Captain Stevens studied Jake's face. Are you sure about this? Once you agree, there's no going back. The Zephyrians take marriage very seriously. Even if it's symbolic, they'll expect you to honor the commitment for life. Jake thought about his sister Kate back on Earth. She was going to be furious when she found out. She'd always worried about him taking dangerous jobs, and this was probably the most dangerous thing he'd ever agreed to do. But Kate would also understand. She worked for the Refugee Assistance Program and had seen how much the colonists wanted a chance at a new life. I'm sure, Jake said. When do we start making arrangements? The government officials exchanged glances. We'll need to send formal acceptance to the Zephyrian Council immediately. The ceremony preparations will take months. You'll need to learn about their customs and traditions. And Jake, there's one more thing you should know. What's that? According to Zephyrian tradition, you won't be allowed to see your bride until the wedding ceremony. All communication before then must go through official diplomatic channels. You'll be marrying someone you've never met. Jake felt a chill run down his spine, but he kept his voice steady. I understand. The silver-haired woman nodded approvingly. Then it's settled. Jake Morrison, You just volunteered to save humanity's future in space. I hope you know what you're doing." As the meeting ended and people filed out of the room, Jake stayed in his chair for a moment. Through the conference room's window, he could see Earth hanging in space like a blue and white jewel. Soon, he would leave it behind forever. He would marry an alien woman he'd never seen, live in a place he'd never been, and start a life he couldn't even imagine. But somewhere out there, 10,000 people would get their chance at a new beginning. Among the stars. And maybe, just maybe, he'd find something worth the sacrifice.